Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Is this on? You can hear me, right? Yes. 13th chapter, we were doing the practices for jnana, the 20 practices which Sri Krishna is teaching Arjuna. 7th verse, amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsa kshantirajyavam acharyopasanam shaucham stairyam atma vinigraha. Humility, unostentatiousness, harmlessness, forbearance, uprightness, service to the Guru, purity, steadiness, self-control. These are the first lot in the 20 practices. We have been studying this, I think, for 3 classes now. Today, I promise to go ahead. The last term, the last practice here we just saw, Atma Vinigraha, control of the mind and senses. Atma means self, self-control. Now, self as pure consciousness does not need to be controlled, and you cannot. One need not and one cannot. It's just awareness. That's what we are. But the self in the sense of mind and senses, this personality, this person, control. So what does this mean? In the 6th chapter, Krishna had said to Arjuna, the mind is your own best friend and is your own worst enemy. Atmaiva ripuratmana, atmaiva bandhuratmanaha. The mind is its own worst enemy and the mind is its own best friend. Which mind is the worst enemy of yourself? The mind which is not controlled. Which mind is the best friend for you? The mind which is controlled. So this is about there is a science and an art of self-control. This is what is being indicated here. I think we ourselves are the ones who do the greatest good to ourselves, and we ourselves are the ones who do greatest harm to ourselves. And if we just reflect upon our lives, the way we have led our lives, the way we have reacted to things happening in our lives, that's what has made the biggest difference in our lives. So self-control is of utmost importance. Now, by self-control here, control of the mind and senses here, it does not mean shutting out life. The way it is sometimes taught, your involvement in samsara is the one which creates all problems for us, our involvement in samsara. And Swami Vivekananda says it's the solution sometimes, renunciation, step back, don't get engaged in samsara. It's like, he gives the example of man who was being bothered by a mosquito. The mosquito sat on the head of the man, and his friend came and gave such a blow to the mosquito, not only killed the mosquito but killed the man also, or knocked him out. That solution, there's a solution of completely disengaging from society. Whether how much it is possible, I don't know. Even a monk in the high Himalayas is not completely disengaged from society. That's not what is meant here. How can we be engaged in life? In your jobs, in your careers, in your families, your personal lives, in our hobbies, in community, in whatever we are doing, and yet not get into trouble. Get into trouble means get ourselves into trouble. Get into trouble means not letting our minds get us into trouble. So how can we be engaged and yet not slip up? That's the art of self-control. That's what is being talked about here. Atma Vinigraha. What helps here? One is, of course, at the level of our actions, we need to clean up. The way we behave in society, what we do, from unethical to ethical, from immoral to moral, whatever we know to be immoral, whatever we know to be unethical, whatever we know to be indecent. Everybody, suppose you may not accept the standards set by religion or by society. I am a rebel. I live by my own standards. I march to the beat of a different drummer. All right, but you also, everybody has their own standards of morality and decency. So, stick to the standards of morality and decency, and let us try to clean up our lives as much as possible. It will be a struggle. So that's the first step towards self-control. I cannot control my mind internally by meditation, by some sophisticated breath control technique, some sophisticated system of non-dual or tantric meditation, and be the most unruly and undisciplined person in my day-to-day life. It will not go. It will not work. It won't work. So externally, clean up our lives. Then higher. Our actions, even when honest, even when decent, they're also always, this is quite possibly all centered around the self. All that we do is to make this person happy. So moving from selfish action to selfless action. It seems counterintuitive, what we do not realize is all this strenuous effort to make I, me, mine happy. Everything is for the happiness of this person. It is misguided. And the proof of it is after living years, if you are 20 years old, 30 years, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, our common experience is I have not succeeded in finding deep, lasting peace. Well, nobody can without spirituality. So, selfless action. Moving from selfish action, selfish, decent action, but selfish. From that, first of all, from immoral to moral. In Sanskrit, from adharmika to dharmika. And that itself is a big struggle. And then from selfish, moral, but selfish action. Most people are like that in society. In any good society, most people are moral and decent. Otherwise, the society would fall apart. But they are moral and selfishly moral. That means they do it for themselves. It's natural. It's natural. From there to selflessness. Why? This is an enlightened selfishness. The more selfless we are, the more we are about the happiness of those other people around me. More we are trying to lead, as Vivekananda's words, a life of usefulness and selflessness. A life of usefulness and blessedness. The more happy we will be. It is counterintuitive. The more we work for ourselves, we think we'll be more happy. It doesn't seem to work too well. If you do it wisely, you will be a little happier than usual, but not really lastingly in a stable way. But selflessly, one is free of a lot of mental tension, mental hang-ups, complexes, if one does not think too much about one's own problems. The more we think about other people, what we can do for others, the more lighter we feel. Swami Ranganathanandaji was the president of our order, 13th president of our order. He would, a simple definition of spirituality, which I have repeated often. What is spirituality? He would say spirituality is when I close my eyes, I find peace within, meditation. When I open my eyes, my attitude is, what can I do for you? That is spirituality. Engage with society, engage with other people. What can I do for you? How may I be of service to you? How may I be of help to you? A life of helpfulness, usefulness. And inside by myself, quite happy, peaceful, serene. Our problem is we do exactly the opposite. When I close my eyes, I have no peace within. All sorts of thoughts, anxieties, desires, grudges, grumbling, everything pops up. And when I open my eyes, not what I can do for you, what can I get from you? The two are related actually. So selflessness. Then another way of controlling the mind make it lighter, happier, easily controllable. easily within our own control, is the devotion. Bhakti, devotion. As my love flows to God, in whichever way you worship, whatever your tradition is. If you do not have a theistic tradition, try to have one. And if you are not at all inclined that way, well, that's your loss. But it really helps. It really helps. Mental health. Carl Jung, who was a very deep, a psychoanalyst, but very deep. He took religion seriously, which his senior counterpart, Freud, did not. And Freud took it seriously, but he took it as a serious pathology, not as... but Jung took it very seriously. And he said, I have often seen that in my patients who are in middle age or above, in most cases of mental illness, it is related, it comes with a dissociation, a divorce from their church. From whatever religious tradition you are part of, you have lost it or dropped away from it. You are not part of any kind of religious tradition. The two go together. I was at this meeting of psychiatrists and church leaders, religious leaders in Washington, D.C. a couple of years back. And one of the church leaders asked the psychiatrists that so far you've been inimical to us, against religion. So have you changed? Has your attitude towards religion? They said no, but you can't argue with the data. He said post-COVID, we are facing a crisis in mental health in this country. And that's why we need help to deal with this crisis. And we clearly see, the data clearly shows that those who have some kind of faith in any religious spiritual tradition, some kind of deep spirituality, there's less incidence of mental illness, and even if there is more resilience there. So clearly you can't argue with the data. So these are people who are hardcore against religion. And they are saying this. The mind comes much more easily under control if there is a great faith or devotion to God. I'm not saying that's a given, but it helps. It helps. It helps to have a reliance on a faith in a higher power. Psychological support. Then the third help for control of mind, of course, is meditation. It's when we start, not advance in meditation. One of the first lessons we learn in meditation is when we start meditating, everybody complains how difficult it is. My mind, I cannot control my mind is restless. Very good. Very good for two reasons. One reason is we've become aware for the first time how restless our minds are. It's only when you try to guide the mind along, whatever your meditation process, whether you're following the breath, repeating a mantra, visualizing a deity, whatever your meditation process, whichever tradition, it's all about attention, control of attention. And when we try to control attention, we see how our attention flickers. So many thoughts, feelings, memories, our attention gets diverted just like that. I want to repeat the mantra, the name of God, try it for even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or even 5 minutes, or even 1 minute. We'll see you'll not be able to do it continuously. Swami Sarvapriyananda in his book, The Sermon in Mount according to Vedanta, the Sermon on the Mount according to Vedanta, there he quotes, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." One of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the pure in heart, before they shall see God. If we are pure in heart, we shall see God. What a great promise. Now a question might arise, how do I know I'm not pure in heart? How do I know? I might be pure in heart, who knows? How do I judge that? What's my purity meter in my heart, in my mind? And he gives an experiment. Swami Sarvapriyananda in that book, he gives an experiment. He says, try this. Suppose you say, I'm going to repeat the name of God, a mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, or something, in whichever tradition you are. I'm going to repeat it for the next 5 minutes. Try repeating it. You will find some other thoughts intrude. The mind flickers, goes else some here and there, and comes back again. This is a sign of impurity of mind, the impurity of the heart. A pure mind will settle down on God quickly. Will go straight to God. It's when, see, it's how strange it is. I want to put my mind on this, on something, X, Y, Z. I have decided, and it's just a matter of 5 minutes, and yet I can't do it. Why not? What's stopping me? It's not that I do not have the power of concentration. I have amazing concentration when it comes to gossip, when it comes to politics, or my favorite sports team. My mind is laser sharp, focused there. But when it comes to this, I can't. Why not? What pulls me down? So that is this impurity of the heart. There's a first good lesson to learn from there. That when we become aware, oh, my mind is so disturbed, so flickering. The second second outcome of this attempt at meditation, when we try to control the mind, attempt at meditation, let us say, the second good outcome of this is that I realize how much of my suffering is due to the flickering nature of my own mind. Let me explain this a little. When we are anxious, afraid, when we are restless, depressed, we generally tend to blame the world, other people, events in my life, trauma. But really there is nothing and nobody to blame. Most of that suffering, whatever kind of suffering it is, could be depression, could be anxiety, most of that suffering is being generated on the spot by the mind. It's just the flickering nature of the mind which we are reading as suffering. And we become upset and we try to look for causes and remedies. What I'm saying is, one monk said, it's like parents. If you have, say, toddlers, for example, what do they call it? Terrible twos or something. So if you have toddlers, little children, every parent knows that when the baby is crying and wailing, it's not the end of the world. The babies cry just like that. So the mother or the parent will just take a look and see everything is all right, fine. Somebody said the most beautiful, innocent thing you will see, the smile of a baby. True. They're glowing like the sun shining. But the next moment, the thunderstorms can come. It could just be because the toy fell out of the pram. Actually, I've seen this. And the child screams its head off because the toy has fallen down from the pram. The mind is like that. Don't give too much importance to the ups and downs of the mind, the anxieties and fears of the mind, the scenarios generated by the mind, the depression and unhappiness of the mind. We give it importance. Imagine if you gave importance according to the decibel level of the screams of the babies. You think the world is coming to an end. No, it isn't. Nothing has happened. The toy has fallen out of the pram. That's all. So the mind is like that. And that's what we realize when we try to meditate. Initial lesson from meditation. When we see the restless nature of the mind and we realize, oh, in day-to-day life, when I'm not meditating also, when I feel upset, irritated, anxious, angry or depressed, all of those are highly exaggerated. Nothing is very wrong at all. Nothing is very wrong. And the proof of that is, in similar situations at other times I can be calm. In similar situations other people can handle it calmly. Which means the situation is not so bad. It's my mind which is making it 10 times worse. And that's a good thing to learn. I mentioned this earlier, and this is actually what a monk said. I'll tell you in Hindi and translate. हम सोचते हैं संसार के चलते मन अशांत है, लेकिन सच तो ये है कि अशांत मन के चलते संसार है. We think because of samsara, because of the world, my mind is upset. But the truth is, it is because my mind is upset that we have samsara. Ashanti, the lack of peace, calmness in the mind, that creates samsara. What does it mean? It makes our problems 10 times worse. It makes our problems feel 10 times worse. 10 times worse than it actually is. I always give the example of doctors. Doctors always know this. Same problem. One patient reacts with calmness and dignity. Another with resilience. Another patient brings the house down. Maybe crying or angry or unwilling to accept it. No. What's the difference? Difference is not in the condition. The difference is in the mind. It's a good thing to recognize how my mind makes things 10 times worse. And meditation shows us that vividly. Oh my God, the mind is so restless, so fickle. Then I'm not going to listen to what the mind says. I'll be careful. And finally, of course, our real nature as pure consciousness. I am the witness of the mind. That also helps us in controlling the mind. You see, this Swami who had come here, Swami Anubhavananda Saraswati, the smiling Swami, so he made a very important observation. He said that everywhere I go, when we talk about meditation, people say, they all have the same complaint. Swami, my mind is not settled, I cannot meditate, my mind is upset or restless. And he said, that's a sign of, he said, that's a sign of spiritual progress. How so? Usually, where is our attention? What is our complaint about? Our attention is on the world and our complaint is about the world, about people. That person said such and such thing. That person didn't give me due respect. That person spoke rudely to me. Or I have been dealt a bad lot in my life. I am complaining about the world and people. My attention is on the world and people. But when I say my mind is not peaceful, why can I not meditate well? Why can I not follow my code of ethics and discipline? I'm not disciplined enough. Now my attention is, I'm not complaining about the world anymore. I'm not complaining about people anymore. My attention is on my mind, on my own behavior. Now, why is that spiritual progress? Whose job is it to look at the world? It's the mind's job. Whose job is it to look at the mind? It is the Sakshi, witness consciousness, Atman. Look at means illumine. Where are you seated when you are looking at the world? You're seated in the mind. Then you're looking at the world. Where are you seated when you're looking at the mind? You're seated in consciousness as the witness. In general. I'm making, not to make too fine a distinction. It's a good point. When we become more worried about our own actions, more conscious of our own thoughts, that's a sign of spiritual progress. Although we think we are complaining of the lack of progress, it's progress. So, how do we control the mind? Atma vinigraha, control, restraint of the mind. One powerful way is name and form. Name and form. See, we are entranced by the world. We are pure consciousness. And we forget that we are pure consciousness. We are not able to stay centered in our nature as pure consciousness even after reading about Vedanta, studying Vedanta for years, because we are sucked out, as it were, into the world outside. Why? By what? By names and forms. This is the Vedantic way of analyzing. What are we experiencing? Names and forms. Not just what we hear, but what we see. Hear, touch, whatever, smell. Now, in spiritual life, there are names and forms which can help us. That's the whole technology of icons and images and names of God. Those are also part of the world. But they are what Sri Ramakrishna calls Vidya Maya. The Maya of ignorance, the Maya of knowledge. So samsara is the Maya of ignorance. What kind of names and forms? Whatever excites us, upsets us, draws us, tempts us, terrifies us. Those are all samsara, names and forms. But there is another kind of Maya, the Maya of knowledge. The divine names and forms, the divine virtues, practicing self-control, practicing non-violence, practicing holding on to the truth, ethics. These are also part of Maya, but that's what Sri Ramakrishna calls Maya of knowledge. That takes us towards God. That tends to free us from samsara. The Maya of ignorance, avidya Maya, traps us further in samsara. So there are names and forms which will free us from samsara. Which will help us to control the mind. There are names and forms which make the mind uncontrolled, pull us outwards. But there are names and forms which help us to control the mind. Is it getting a little warm in here? Yes, you can put on the fan. There's that switch. Yes. Warm means it's conducive to sleep. So let me give two examples how names and forms can help us to control the mind. Sri Ramakrishna, somebody asked same question. Somebody asked Sri Ramakrishna, Sir, how do I control sinful thoughts? And Sri Ramakrishna said that clap your hands and take the name of God, which is something he would do all the time. He never taught anything that he himself did not do. When the evening came, when sun set, every day he would immediately look around and say sun is setting. He would clap his hands and Ram, Ram, Krishna, Krishna, Govinda, Govinda, Hari, Hari, like that, Kali, Kali, Ma, like that. He would clap his hands and take the name of God. Swami Yogananda, one of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, he said, I thought this was too simple a technique. I thought he would teach me something deeper, how to control passions. But when I tried it, it worked. So the name of God, chanting the name of God, that helps us in controlling the mind. You see, one of the tricks about the mind is that it can take up only one thing at a time. And that's a secret which helps us to control the mind. If you can provide that one thing, then the mind will happily catch on to that thing. You just have to make the mind latch on to something. And what it latches on to, we have a freedom to do that. We can introduce something. There's a old Vedantic teaching about the elephant walking through the bazaar. Now imagine an Indian bazaar, a market, with little shops on both sides and a narrow street, and an elephant walking through it. And it's not an uncommon sight. Even now it's not uncommon. You can see in small towns an elephant with the mahout sitting on top. Now the problem with the mahout is the elephant is subject to all sorts of temptations while walking through so there are bananas there are these fruits there is sugar cane there in these shops, and the elephant has the trunk which it takes and it can grab. How do you stop it? The elephant is stronger than everybody else. If the elephant wants you can't stop it. So what they cleverly do is, they put a heavy weight, like a heavy iron ball or a log of wood, and they get the elephant to catch that. An elephant holds that with its trunk. And as it walks with its trunk swinging and holding that log, it will walk majestically through the narrow streets, but then the trunk will not go here and there. Because it's already engaged. Similarly, the name of God, chanting the mantra, is that it's not just the one benefit that it will keep the mind engaged. That's one of the benefits. There are many, many, many benefits. Chanting the name of God mentally, a mantra. Especially if you're lucky enough to have been initiated by the Guru, then mentally keep repeating the mantra. The mind will not wander here and there. Make it a habit to repeat the mantra. Same question was asked to Swami Adbhutananda, one of Sri Ramakrishna's disciples. A devotee asked him, how do I overcome lustful thoughts? And Adbhutananda gave him a method based on form. Sri Ramakrishna suggested the name of God. Swami Adbhutananda told him, keep a picture of Sri Ramakrishna. And whenever you are overcome by such thoughts, take it out and stare intently at it. After some time, the mind and the sense organs will withdraw and be merged in the thought of God. Now see, two answers. One is the form, Sri Ramakrishna, or any divine form in which you have faith. If you have devotion towards it. It could be Krishna, it could be Christ, whichever form. Or the name. So these are two ways. Ultimately, from a Vedantic perspective, remember we are in the chapter of Kshetra Kshetragya, field and knower of the field. The mind is part of the field. It's not the knower of the field. The mind is an object, it's an instrument. It's not you, it's not me. I am the witness of the mind. One sadhu gave a very beautiful analogy to explain it. The child is playing with toys and in its own mind, running around and playing and jumping and dancing and singing, all in the careful vision, in the sight of the mother who watches it, keeps a watch on the child. And when the child is tired, it comes back to the mother and lies down and sleeps peacefully in the lap of the mother. Now that's a very good example. The child is the mind. It does many things, but always in the vision of the mother. Who is mother for the child? Consciousness. The mother is watching it. And when the child is tired, it comes back and lies down peacefully in the lap of the mother. What happens when the mind gets merged in sleep or in meditation? It's gathered in and becomes stilled. Consciousness is still watching, is illumining it. It's a good example, very sweet example. So know that you are the consciousness. You are the mother watching the child. You are not the mind. I am not the mind, neither are you. We are awareness, we are consciousness, we are the knower of the field, and the mind is also the field. Atma vinigraha, control of the mind. By the way, these 20 practices, they all become much easier the more we pay attention to all of them, instead of trying to do one thing. If we keep track of these things, as many as possible, they are mutually supporting. Mahatma Gandhi, he writes in a very perceptive letter in the freedom struggle in India. So the Congress workers whom he was leading, he would tell them to practice truth and non-violence and brahmacharya, which is celibacy or self-control, control of the senses. And now many of them, they didn't quite understand Mahatma Gandhi's, that it was a spiritual struggle for Mahatma Gandhi. The political side of it was one side of it, but it was a spiritual struggle. Those who were under him, he was leading, they were not all that interested in the spiritual side of it. Many of them were, freedom fighters, patriots, politicians. So they said, we understand truth. Nobody wants to say, I am not in favor of truth. Yes, we have to practice truth. I have to be honest. We also understand non-violence. But why this brahmacharya? Why this teaching of self-control, celibacy? Why? What's the point of it? And Mahatma Gandhi, he writes with a touch of sadness, he says, they do not realize that it is much easier done together than severally. See, if I want to be truthful, but I want to be violent, they will not go together. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the Gulag Archipelago, he says, lies and violence always go together. He's talking about the old Soviet Union, where you want to, hide lies. And he's talking about it at a societal level, of course. But then that kind of dishonesty, that kind of lying must be protected surrounded by a fence of violence. Truth and non-violence, they go well together. Self-control. Try to be truthful and lead a dissolute life of indiscipline and depravity. You cannot be. It's very difficult. So, he says, Mahatma Gandhi, they go well together. All these 20 practices, you might say it's a lot, but actually it's much easier. One just looks around and then says, yes, I'm keeping track of these things in my life. Then let us move on to the next one. Indriyārtheṣhu vairāgyam, Indriyārtheṣhu vairāgyam, anahankāra evacha, anahankāra evacha, janma mrityu jara vyādhi, janma mrityu jara vyādhi, dukkha doshanudarshanam, dukkha doshanudarshanam. Dispassion for sense objects, absence of egoism, seeing the misery and evil in birth, death, old age and sickness. Let's start there. Janma mrityu jara vyādhi dukkha doshanudarshanam. Seeing the sorrow which pervades life, the suffering which pervades life. And that's a hard sell in this day and age, especially if you are in Manhattan, in New York. Listen, suffering, well, I'm not blissed out, but I'm not really in suffering. I'm okay. I'm not satisfied. I might have a mild case of dissatisfaction. Maybe I didn't get parking, or maybe it's a little too cold outside for me, but that's all. I'm not suffering. Krishna says, dwell upon it. Dwell upon it. Life is suffering. Just because things are going well for us, for you right now, doesn't mean we are missing a great truth about life. Buddhism, Buddha's first noble truth, dukkha, sarvam dukkham, all is suffering. Swami Tapasyanandaji, I heard this from another Swami, Atmapriyanandaji. Swami Tapasyanandaji was a very senior monk of our order, a vice president. So he would introduce Buddhism by saying Buddhism is a very serious religion. The first thing you have to accept to begin Buddhism is that all is suffering. What we consider as pleasure, happiness, is illusion. Swami Vivekananda said, it's a tickling of the nerves. Erich Fromm, another psychoanalyst, I'm quoting a lot of psychoanalysts today. Erich Fromm said, what passes for happiness today is building up tension and releasing it. What passes for happiness in our modern industrial society is building up tension and releasing it. That's what advertising is, building up tension. And then you purchase it, tension is released. Black Friday or Amazon Prime Day, it released tension. I purchased it. Then again build up tension and then release it. That is what passes for happiness. It's not real happiness. Sri Krishna says, Prapya imam asukham lokam bhajasva mam. Having attained, having come into this world of sorrow, worship me. And he points out the biggies, the sources of our sorrow. And Krishna points out here, Janma mrityu jara vyadhi. Illness. That also in Buddha's story, when the prince Siddhartha, he went out into the city, he was driven, the chariot was being driven. The first sight he saw 4 sights. Sick person, a sick man, an old man, a sick man, an old man, dead man, and a monk, a hermit. So sick man, what's wrong with him? Because he was a prince and brought up under the careful instructions of his father, the king, that he should not be exposed to any suffering at all. Should not see any suffering at all. By chance, he sees. Actually, the gods had arranged it that way so that he would see it. That would evoke his inner spiritual, awakening. What's wrong with him? He is sick, O prince. He is ill. Does everybody become ill? Yes. Nobody escapes illness? Nobody. All those who are embodied will become ill. That's the very nature of the body. Oh, so will my father become ill? Yes. And will my child, he had just become the father of this young child, Rahula, little Bobby. My wife, my child, yes, they too. Yes, my prince, you also will become ill someday. Illness, vyadhi. Illness. No one escapes. Why not? Why don't we escape it? Body. The body is subject. It's continuously changing. Notice, we are predisposed towards suffering by nature. So if there is a pinprick in my foot, my whole attention goes there. Though 99.99% of the body is fine. But my entire attention is on the pain from the pinprick. And that's nature, because that's how nature has designed the pain system, so that it alerts us to any trouble anywhere in the body. But our attention goes there. One tooth, toothache. That's why somebody said transcendental meditation. Because automatic, you see, your mind is not concentrated, just get a toothache. I got it once. Whole night dental meditation. So, mind will automatically be concentrated. Our whole psychology is designed in such a way, it goes towards suffering. illness will immediately cause suffering. There is no doubt about it. And the body will become ill sometime or the other. It's a continuous dynamic system, continuously under attack. We read in school the immune system, how it is continuously under attack from the world outside. It's a continuous struggle to be healthy. So illness is unavoidable. Illness will come. Vyadhi, illness. And then the next biggie is, see, when illness, what does it do? When we suffer due to illness, greater or lesser, we are unable to pursue our worldly goals, far less our spiritual goals. You're unable to go out and earn money or finish your degree. You're unable to pursue pleasure, because nothing seems pleasurable when you're sick. What do you like to eat? What would you like to enjoy? Nothing. You feel horrible. And spiritual goals, you don't feel like meditating, you don't feel like studying. There is this deep, you just suffer. You lay there and suffer. And unavoidable. Even in this day and age, with our modern medical technology, we are far better off. Still. I've given this example earlier. When the COVID pandemic hit, just before that, I was in Boston. I was attending classes at Harvard University, actually. There was a beautiful class on the Christian contemplative prayer. 6 books we had to study on Christian contemplative prayer, when we had the most wonderful professor, Stephanie Paulsell. You can imagine at Harvard University, the classes were so packed that there were kids sitting on the carpet, of course on the chairs, but on the tables and on the windowsills. So she had to take the same class twice, just to make sure that people could get a place to sit. She was a very good teacher. At one time, we were studying The Interior Castle, which is a book by Saint Teresa of Avila, of inner prayer. Very beautiful, very profound book on Christian mysticism. Now, the professor pointed out to us, you all might be a little puzzled by why does she, in her letters to the sisters, why does she keep cautioning them, take care of your health, do not fall ill? It's because, in those days, before the advent of modern medicine, they were not so scientifically advanced, and they used to be ill most of the time. There were all kinds of illnesses, and so it is a great barrier to spiritual progress, and that's why she would caution them, be careful of your health, take care of your health, don't fall ill. I mean, in our days, people are so healthy, we don't understand what is this always being ill all the time, sometimes this illness, sometimes that illness. And I still remember, we said that. Next week, COVID hit. God has a way of showing us. You think you're living in the 21st century? You're in Boston, Harvard University, next to the Harvard Medical College, COVID. And good for them, Harvard was one of the first to recognize the seriousness of it, and they shut down within 24 hours they shut down. The whole university, within 24 hours, all the dorms were empty. Everybody was sent packing home. Somebody has got an active device somewhere. That's all right. So illness unavoidable. Vyadhi. Contemplate that. Think about it. Make the best of it when we are not ill. When we are ill and we want to meditate, we want to study, and we feel, I wish I had done that when I was not sick, when I was alert, when I was healthy. I wish I had prayed. I wish I had gotten up early in the morning to meditate. I wish I had studied more instead of wasting my time. Then the next biggie is old age. Jara, old age. It comes to everybody. Especially these days. One doctor told me, Swami, now we can, with the advance in medical technology and diet and everything and elimination of major diseases, we can make sure you will live long, but we cannot make sure you will live well. We can live longer now. We are living longer now. But old age, all sorts of old age problems surround us. We are surrounded by problems of old age. Our oldest member, senior-most member, Bill Conrad, he's 100 this year and doing well, tolerably for that age. And he always says that old age is not for sissies, Swami. Old age is not for sissies. It's a host of problems, a continuous decline in physical, vital and mental, sensory and mental and intellectual faculties. A decline. If one is blessed with good karma, and good karma ensures maybe good genes and good health and a wise mind which will live wisely, then the decline will be managed. Still be a decline. It will be managed. And if not, rapid decline. You can suddenly lose your health. When somebody said a very nice saying that we lose our health in order to earn money, and then we lose our money in order to regain our health. Old age, very difficult time. Again, regret, surrounded by regrets that if such a thing is possible, spiritual life, why did I not do more when I was younger? Contemplate the sorrows, that inevitable sorrows of old age, the decline of old age. You are fine. You are fine as the witness consciousness. I would tell Bill Conrad, he would say to me, Swami, my memory is not what it used to be. I said, Bill, I'm about half your age. My memory is not what it used to be. Don't worry about it. You are the witness consciousness. You are the Atman. You are fine. And he would say, that is small comfort, Swami. That's little comfort. It's true. When the memory declines and physical health, mental health declines, that is old age, jara. Shankaracharya sings, Vriddho yati grihitva dandam tadapi namunchati asha pindam. What a pitiful sight. He says, there goes the old man leaning on a stick, tottering with tottering steps. But the burden of desire has not gone yet. The mind is full of desire. You spend a life in indulgence of desire, it will not be satisfied. It will grow greater and greater. And in the old age, when you have no means of satisfying it, the mind will be filled with desire then. No wonder we are reborn. I remember when I was a kid, I had seen a Hollywood movie. In those days, we had these tapes. That was the latest technology. Video cassette tapes, big tapes. You need to put it in the video cassette player. Kids today will laugh when they see that stuff. And on a television screen, it was a Hollywood movie. I've forgotten the name of the movie, but there was a ghost in it. I still remember the ghost. A person had died who is to, again, that's something in the past. Luckily, those things have changed now. Smoking. So this guy used to smoke a lot. And in those days, they had these, like you can get Coke and stuff like that, and chips and all in this dispenser. You put in money and it comes out. Juice and stuff. What do you call it? Vending machine. It seems at that time in America, there were vending machines which would give you cigarette packets. So the scene, that scene, I've forgotten the whole movie, but that scene I remember, it struck me a lot. This guy is like a ghost and is a ghost. He's floating around and he sees the vending machine and full of cigarette packets. And he's trying to get it. His hand goes through the machine. So he can go straight into the machine, but he can't touch any of it, because he doesn't have a physical body with which he can smoke a cigarette. And it struck me at that moment why we are helplessly reborn. We have such tremendous desires which we need to again and again indulge in, and until we realize that is not the way. It will just increase our suffering. Jara, old age. And then the biggest one of them all, Mrityu, death. All die. Vivekananda says, emperors die and paupers die. The learned die and the ignorant die. Saints die and sinners die. Death comes to all. And that is the great fear of our lives. That Ernst Becker's book, I mentioned it earlier also, Denial of Death. It got a Pulitzer Prize. Again, it's a book on psychotherapy. I don't know what's happening to me today. A lot of psychotherapy. But there he says, it is the greatest fear of our lives, but we suppress it. And when we say, no, I don't think about death, you're suppressing it. And it manifests. How it manifests is what he calls immortality projects. That's his analysis. It's a beautiful, a little scary idea that all the great things that we do, he says, human beings do. From, the first, most basic thing people do is marry and raise a family, have children. That's an immortality project. I'm trying to continue to live through my children. Or you found a business, build up a business, or make these great works of art, write books, or fight for an empire, all great, great projects, scientific invention, endowments in my name. These are all immortality projects, he says. They're all product. Why is there so much energy behind these projects? It's all coming from fear of death. Fear of death. From having a child to founding an empire, it's all fear of death. It's a byproduct of that. He calls it immortality project. And religion, also he says religion is fear of death. And he says they are all doomed to failure because you're going to die. You're going to die. One famous actor, he was interviewed. So how would you like to be immortal? Would you like to be immortal, remembered in your films, as in your films? He said, no, I would like to be immortal in this body. So, very simply put, but honest. I would like to be immortal in this body, not in my films. My films, good. It's impossible. It's impossible. Death is there for everybody. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudarshanam. The sorrow of old age, disease, and finally death. The great pain which we have gone through this cycle many, many times, and we are doomed to repeat it many, many times unless we attain enlightenment. And why birth? Birth is usually we celebrate. Birth is a thing for celebration. Birthday. But he says janma, it's sorrow. Why? It's from birth alone that proceeds old age, disease and death. Birth is the cause of death. Somebody joked that life is a terminal illness with a 100% fatality rate. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi. Because our true life is immortal as the spirit, as Atman, as Brahman. But we don't know that. And we hold on to these bodies and try to live in these biological cages. So he says, anudarshanam. One of the practices for enlightenment is to dwell on what is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's happened to me in the past. It's happening to everybody around me. It's going to happen to me very soon. Very, very soon. It'll be upon me before I know it. People, when you are getting old, the first thing which people feel is, I don't feel old. Internally, I still feel like my memories of being young are still very clear and present. Externally, I'm 80. In my memories, I'm 30 or 20. So, it will be upon us very quickly. Therefore, anudarshanam. Anudarshanam means to reflect upon it. Darshanam, to see. Anudarshanam, to reflect upon these facts. When we see it in others and see it in our own lives. And that will create a sense of this desire for moksha, desire for freedom. If you're not aware of bondage, what desire for freedom will there be? Then he goes on to say, Indriyārtheṣhu vairāgyam anahankāra evacha. Hence will come a dispassion for the pleasures of the senses. Life is not for eating. Eating is for life. For eating, for consumption, for possessions, for all kinds of pleasure chasing. Indriyārtha, the objects of the senses. I want to see and hear and smell. That's childish. It sets up like a blaze the sensory experiences of seeing, hearing, smell. It occupies our attention immediately, and therefore it hides our real nature. It's like the pictures on a screen. It hides the screen. One must step back from too much sensory experience and enjoyment. quietness and inwardness, turning away from worldly experiences. Inwardness is prerequisite of any kind of spiritual life. Indriyārtheṣhu vairāgyam. American phrase, I like that. Been there, done that. That feeling should come. In Sanskrit, there is a phrase which is not as colorful or as clear. Alam pratyayavan. It literally means the person who has the understanding enough. Alam means enough. Enough. We should say to God, okay, got it. Get on, move on with it. I've seen this. I don't want a repetition of this thing again and again ad nauseum. That's a sign of maturity. Indriyārtheṣhu vairāgyam anahankāra evacha. Humility, that is non-egotism. Ego, of course, is a central problem in spiritual life. At its deepest, we're talking about the field and the knower of the field. You are the knower of the field. You are pure consciousness. The ego is part of the field. And our problem is, we do not know that we are the witness consciousness. We think we are the ego. Not to think. We automatically behave. We think, we feel, and we speak, and we work as if we were the ego. I. But then who are we? I am the witness of the I. The real I is the witness of this so-called the felt I. Even the word, the felt. Felt by whom or by what? Felt by you, the witness consciousness. The ego is not free of the body and mind. The ego is just a function of the mind. Anahankāra is a vritti, in yoga, is a vritti, a movement of the mind. I've defined it earlier also as the appropriating function of the mind. Thoughts are going on in the mind. The ego says, ego is that function of the mind which says, I am thinking. Here, speaking is going on. The ego is that function of the mind which says, I am speaking. Feelings are coming in the mind. Happy, sad, excited, bored. I am happy. I am sad. I am excited or bored. So that's a function of the mind. It's necessary for an individual to function, to tie together the various mental, sensory and physical activities going on in his body-mind. That's what the ego does. But you are not the ego. You are the witness of the ego. Therefore, anahankāra, that I know that I am not the ego. I know I am not the person. The person is a mask. Literally the word person means mask. The original Greek meaning was mask. Persona. That through which sound comes. They used to hold masks in the Greek theater and speak through them. Sona means sound. So person came from that. It literally means a mask. Mask for what? For our divine essence, for our real nature, the witness consciousness, which is right here, but we don't see it at all. Anahankāra, one must step back from the ego. Now, it will not directly happen. It's difficult to step back from the ego because we think we are the ego. What we have to do is to reduce, to make the ego weaker. Therefore, this reflection on the sorrows of life, reflection and then controlling the desire for sense objects, all these other practices will remove the supporters of the ego. Then you can easily see that I am not the ego. When our life is ego-based projects, even religion, spirituality can become an ego-based project. If our life is just full of ego-based projects, I cannot distance myself from the ego. But when I reduce those ego-based projects, when I step back, when I practice these practices, then the ego is deprived of its great supporters, its army. Then the ego stands isolated and we can see I am not the ego. Asaktir anabhiṣhvaṅgaḥ, asaktir anabhiṣhvaṅgaḥ, putra-dāra-gṛihādiṣhu, putra-dāra-gṛihādiṣhu, nityaṁ ca sama-chittatvam, nityaṁ ca sama-chittatvam, iṣhṭāniṣhṭopapattiṣhu, iṣhṭāniṣhṭopapattiṣhu. Non-attachment and non-identification with children, wife, home, etc. Always being even-minded, whether good or evil befalls. Okay. Asaktir anabhiṣhvaṅgaḥ putra-dāra-gṛihādiṣhu. Detachment. Our emotions, thoughts, actions are tremendously centered around something in the world. See, you are the knower of the field. But we have become all about the field. I, the witness consciousness, am entangled with the field. And not uniformly so. Specific places, specific persons, they pull our attention, our attachment, our efforts, all our desires, hopes, fears are all centered around people and certain things. First and foremost, children. So children. It's very natural. Nature has designed us in such a way that for the care of the child, taking care and bringing up a child is no joke at all. So nature tricks you into becoming extra attached to the child. Parents become so child-focused. It's necessary for the child's care, but in a way it's a trap for the parent. Your life becomes all about the child. This is called sakti. And he says that practice is asaktir, detachment. Not to be cold and distant from the child. What are you doing? I'm practicing, I'm now the knower of the field. You're a part of the field. No. But do it wisely. And see the same divinity in the child and worship the divinity by taking care of the child. When you're feeding the child, you're bathing the child, and educating the child, treating the illness, whatever it is what you do for the child, affection, all of that is your worship of the divinity embodied who has appeared before you as the child. Then the attachment will not be to the person called your child. And at first it may seem like imagination, but it's not imagination. If there is any truth to spiritual life at all, that is the truth. If the divinity is appearing in the form of your child. We live in illusion. We see this body, this personality, and we say, this is my child. Most of it is my own construct. How much do we know of another person? My spouse, my child. When we become attached to the person, we are doing ourselves harm and we are doing that person harm also. It's not a good way of living. Nope. Especially these days. The whole romantic idea of, he says your spouse. Because he's speaking to Arjuna, he mentions wife. Dara means wife. But basically means your spouse. Husband, wife, partner. This idea that one person can fulfill us, one person can complete us. It's a very egoic way of thinking. I am this person, that person will complete me. The poor person. It's too much of a demand. One person cannot come. I have an endless, I don't even know what my needs are, what my little foibles are. How can one person take care of all of my needs and emotional needs? Impossible. And then they are changing day to day, and in one day also changing throughout the day. How can one person? Impossible. It's a recipe for suffering. Rather, what will spiritual life say? Will he say that then don't get married, be a monk like Swamiji? No. You can be in married life also, in family life also, but always, all these relationships, divinize them internally. Don't make an announcement on Facebook. From today you are divinized now. Yeah. It's like a magician. Magicians want abracadabra, you're divinized. No, they let us change our vision. My beloved Lord is in this form. Or if your mind is, I'm not that sentimental, then all right. The same way that I am the witness consciousness in this body and mind, there also in that field, the same witness consciousness is there. That one and I are not separate. It is my worship to that witness consciousness everywhere. The knower of the field everywhere. Krishna says, I am the knower of the field in all fields. Therefore God is there in all fields, in your child also, in your spouse also. And so whatever we do, it becomes our worship. Now you are worshipping Krishna because he has promised, he has said that I am there in all these fields. So my relationship is becomes with God now. Vivekananda said, the way of Vedanta is to divinize all our human relationships and humanize our divine relationship. But divinize all our human relationship with spouse, with child, internally divinized. It's my worship to God in this form. The Lord has been pleased to put me in this family with this spouse and these children. Let me worship the Lord in this way. That is the temple He has prepared for me. That is the battlefield often. That's why battlefield is given here. Kurukshetra is prepared for me. That is the field He has given me. Kshetra. And let me worship in that way then. By serving the Lord in this child, in this spouse. Putra-dāra. So then the attachment to the person will fade away. If we do that, the first thing that will happen is you begin to see it's not so much this child. This child is more or less the same as all children. This egoic attachment because it's my child. It's impossible if you relate to the child from the perspective of the ego. I, the parent, relating to my child, very difficult to say that all children are same to me. They are not. But the more we see the divinity in the child, we'll see the same divinity in all beings and all other children also. I was reading Swami Shivananda, Mahapurush Maharaj. It was his birthday yesterday, a day for yesterday. And he was a second president of our order, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. He used to say, my parents were very devout, my mother was very devout, and my father was he was the head of a school, local school, and very charitable. He would keep 20 to 25 boys from poor families. He would keep them in our home, like a dorm, and pay for their food and stay and education. And my mother would look after all of us, me and all those other children, equally. And the village women would say, would tell my mother, you're a simpleton. In those days, there was a high child mortality rate. So you have only one son. You have only one son. Take special care of him. And she would reply, no. Just as the Lord has given me that child, so also all these children. They are all the same to me. Now that takes a great heart and a lot of purity of mind to be like that. So asakti, not sakti, not attachment, asakti, detachment. And then another great thing, when the child is ready to go, as they will inevitably be, you'll be able to let go gracefully. You'll be there to help. I see a lot of parents, especially Indian parents. One gentleman said, he had come, not to say this is a very common factor, and it's a good thing that Indian parents do, they come to help with the grandchildren. So one elderly gentleman, he said, so what do you do? He said, I am in the IAS. Those are from India, the Indian Administrative Service, which is like federal bureaucrats like the feds here. So I am in the IAS. So this other person asked, oh, the Indian Administrative Service. He said, no, the Indian Aya service. The Indian nanny service. It literally means the Indian nanny service. I have been put to work by my, son-in-law or son or daughter-in-law, something like that, to take care of the children. That's all right if you are helping, but attachment to children, grandchildren, to the extent that point I see it again and again and again. It's not wanted. And at one point it is resented. It's because in the name of love it is an attachment. At that point it becomes clear. At one point that love was necessary for the growth of the child, but now it's an attachment. It's no longer necessary, but the parent, father or mother, grandfather or grandmother cannot let go. So asakti, non-attachment. And it can only come if you divinize the relationship mentally. Then you'll be happily able to let go. You'll be there to guide, bless, help, but you will not be, you'll leave me alone to my spiritual life. The opposite also I've seen. Somebody told me, I forgot who. He said, I've told my children, my son and daughter-in-law, I'm there. Let me know how you guys are doing. And if you need anything, let me know. I'm not going to call you every day or talk to you every day. Or not at all, not necessary. You leave me alone into my privacy and my spiritual practices. What I'm doing in my life. Great. That's a sign of great maturity. Asaktir, anabhiṣhvaṅgaḥ. Griha, home. Let me just finish this. So another attachment, home, car, or prized possessions, and so many other things. Home especially. It's a nest after all. The bird is strongly attached to the nest. So the home, attached to the home. Adi, etc., whatever is. Why I wanted to mention this was, I heard a talk by, there's a very well-known Vaishnava saint now in India called Swami Premanandaji. So he's quite popular in Vrindavan, in the land of Krishna. So explaining the attachment to the house, he gave a beautiful, very deep insight, very Vedantic insight. He said, there are these 3 little huts. He was telling a monk not to be attached to the cottage. Monks build a little cottage, little hut, and said even that one can become attached to, let alone Manhattan apartment or house. One can become attached to the cottage. Don't be attached to the cottage. See, we have built these 3 cottages. We inhabit these 3 cottages. Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira. These 3 little cottages. The physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body. None of them are mine. I live in them, but they are not mine. I am not the body. The body is not mine. I am not the mind. The mind is not mine. It's a cottage provided to me by the Lord. The Lord is the landlord. Even what is called the most subtle, at the level of the causal body, even that I am not, it is not mine. You'll be immediately free. He was advising that monk. Those 3 little cottages, give up your attachment to all those 3 little cottages, identification. I am not this body, it is not mine, it is the Lord's. I am not even this mind, this personality, these thoughts, I am not them. They are not mine. You're free immediately. And also the causal body. ṛihādiṣhu. Of course, here it just means an actual house or dwelling. Then will come nityaṁ sama-chittatvam. Make an effort to maintain the serenity of your mind in the ups and downs which come in life. Ups and downs which come in life. This serenity is possible only if you're God-centered. If you're centered in the mantra, if you're centered in the devotion to God, if you're centered in our nature as the witness consciousness, as the knower of the field, not the field, then the mind will be serene in the ups and downs of the life. If I am centered with this body and mind cannot be serene. When things go well, I'll feel happy. When things don't go well, I'll inevitably feel. If I feel happy when things are well, I'm bound to feel happy when things go badly for me. You can't escape. You can't say, I'll rejoice when things go well, people are nice to me, health is good, stock market is up. And when things go badly, I will be a Vedantic, I'm the witness of the field, I'm the knower of the field. You can't be. You'll be sucked into that also. I'll end with this. No questions today because we really run out of time. But the important point. There is a Kabir Das, his very nice doha. Yes, let me do the peace chant and then you can come with the basket. I'll tell you that story. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Rupanamastu. Very often quoted, a couplet from Kabir Das, the medieval mystic poet of India. It goes, I'll tell you the Hindi first and then translate. दुख में सुमीरे सब कोई, सुख में सुमीरे न कोई, जो सुख में सुमिरन करे उसको दुख काहे का होए. People remember God in suffering, when they are in suffering, when things go badly. When things are going well, nobody remembers God. Those who remember God when things go well, why will that person ever have sorrow? Why will that person ever experience sorrow? People remember God in sorrow because they try to catch hold of God in sorrow for help. Nobody remembers God in happiness. If you remember God in happiness, why will there ever be sorrow in your life? Now, there is something subtle here. This monk I referred to, the Vaishnava saint, somebody asked him a question that I don't understand this saying, because I find in my life that when things are going well, then I can do my spiritual practices, my prayers and meditation and everything. It's only when things are tough, then I can't do it. So it's just the opposite of what Kabir Das is saying. And his answer was very perceptive. I want to share this with you today. He immediately said, in when things are going well, in good fortune, everything is well, you say you are doing spiritual practices happily. But then that happiness comes from the happy circumstances, not from your spiritual practices. So consider this carefully. Why are you happy and peaceful when things are going well? Is it because of your spiritual practices or because things are going well? It's because things are going well. You are enjoying the good circumstances, the fortunate circumstances. And when those things go away, people behave badly towards you, job is problematic, you have clashes with the boss or co-workers, your health is not good, things fall apart, even temporarily, then I become upset. Somebody joked, when the setup is not to my liking, I become upset. And therefore I cannot do spiritual practice anymore. Because when things were all right, at that time also I was not deriving joy from my spiritual practice. I was deriving joy because things were going well. Now what you should do is, when things are going well, do your spiritual practices, repeat the mantra, think of God, meditate, and get joy from that. As all the things which are going well, be a dignified witness to that, the knower of the field. Oh, things are very good in the field. Good. But my joy is from my Lord, from the mantra, from my meditation, from my prayer, from my spiritual study. And when things are not good, when the setup becomes not to my liking, my mantra, my spiritual study, my Lord will still be there. So if my joy was from that, that joy will still be available to me. There I'll be tormented by the problems outside, but internally that joy will still be available to me. In fact, I will catch hold of the Lord even more strongly when things are adverse, things do not go well for me. What an important insight. When things are going well, then do your spiritual practices and derive joy from the spiritual practice, from your meditation, from your devotion, from your love of God, from the mantra, and from the Vedantic inquiry. It will help you, it will help us when things are not going well. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.